Okay, so fresh off Tony Harrison's win over Edward Diaz in his debut at 160, Tony Harrison's first fight in 2 years. Obviously, Tony Harrison's known for being a 154 fighter throughout his entire career. He had a bad loss against Tim Tszyu, took 2 years off. He's now making his debut at 160 against Edward Diaz and wins the fight pretty convincingly. Tony Harrison boxed his pretty normal self, was tried to be tricky at times, used that jab really well. Probably didn't use it enough, but could have used it a bit more. Edward Diaz was the smaller guy, clearly in worse shape, but he's the type of puncher where his only chance of winning that is rocking you and knocking you out, stopping you, right? So Edward knows that goes into that fight, and that was his game plan. So close the distance. He's a smaller guy. He's not got the gas tank that Tony Harrison should have, in theory. It sort of proved to be different, but in theory, he didn't have the gas tank. So he needed to go out there and get a stoppage, right? And there was definitely moments where Tony Harrison wasn't rocked, but Edward was getting to him, right? Edward was getting to him. Edward was landing clean on him. He was applying pressure and putting him against the ropes. Tony Harrison, for the most part, was able to weather those storms somewhat, as in he didn't get rocked, didn't get dropped, and was able to carry on boxing, and then eventually went on to win the fight. But yeah, a win for Tony Harrison, and not an amazing performance, not the sort of a performance where you see and like, okay, wow, let's propel this guy into the world title picture. Like, no, this guy's still quite a way off, and he's 34 now, and you're like, the best bet now for him is probably a couple more tune-ups like this, then throw him in there with one of the top names at 160. They will smoke him. He gets a big payday, and that's probably it for Tony Harrison, because the sort of performance I saw from him there against Edward Diaz, you'd want to see a former world champion like Tony Harrison go out there and just smoke a guy like Edward Diaz if you're thinking he's got anything left in the tank. But he went the distance. He didn't look amazing in this performance. But that's sort of the type of fighter Tony Harrison is, though. He's world level. He's a world champion. But for the most part, apart from the fight where he actually won the world title, he's lost to everyone that's world class. And you can kind of see the deficiencies in his boxing style, where, of course, you can see the stuff like the jab, the feints, and some of the setups, and where he's able to be sort of tricky. You can see why he's trouble for a lot of guys and beats a lot of low-level fighters. But you can also see why this guy is never really going to be able to be long-term world champion material, because he's just not sharp enough as a boxer, in my opinion, right? You look at Tony Harrison and you think, okay, well, this guy's at 160 now. Of course, his aim will be to capture a world title at 160 the same way he did at 154. But I don't fancy him to do anything against those guys. I look at one of the world champions at middleweight now. Now, of course, this won't be Tony Harrison's next fight, but this will be who Tony Harrison is aiming to fight in another 2, 3, 4 fights, I'd imagine. Guys like Carlos Adames. Now, I would predict Carlos Adames to get Tony Harrison out of there in under 5 rounds. That's the sort of level I think Tony Harrison's at this point at 160, right? But we'll see what's next for Tony Harrison. I'd be curious to know what you guys thought of that performance. Do you think it was a good performance? Do you think Tony Harrison's really got a future at 160? Of course, he did win the fight, which is what matters at the end of the day, because you can only beat what's in front of you. But I'd be curious to know what you guys think. Do you think he can have a career at 160, go on to become a world champion at 160 the same way he did at 154? Or do you think he's washed now, he's 34, he's over the hill, and he's just going to be used as fodder for the next champion or upcoming contender? But yeah, curious to know what you guys think in the comments below. And yeah, another episode of the Seth solo side quest in the bag, and I'm out. Peace.